is the NDA that has come out of the House will have language to do partially what we want to have happen. What we want to have happen is make sure that our military men and women will not continue to be discharged because for reasons, health reasons, they don't want to take the vaccine. And so that's an unbelievable win for our military men and women. But let's remember, the military is about military members. We need to have all the equipment, need to have all these, but without the men and women in the military, we can't get this done. One person I want to introduce, retired Rear Admiral Pete Brown. I want to thank you for being here. We had the opportunity to work together when I was governor of Florida, and also worked in the last administration. But he'll be available afterwards to talk about some of the stories he knows of Coast Guard members that have been discharged, that have their stories are horrible. So I just want to thank you for coming up here and being willing to tell the stories of people that you know. So we still have to focus on the people that have been discharged. They need to be reinstated with back pay. These people have been injured. This is clearly doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for them. It doesn't make sense for our military. So now I think each of us have some stories. So I just want to tell you, pull up the wrong one. Tell you a couple of the stories that I've got. So you saw we had Hurricane Ian just recently. So one of the individuals was one of the swimmers that saved people in that hurricane. Biden called him, and then they're discharging him. Biden called to thank him. This is a hero that saved people's lives, and then right after that, this guy's going to get discharged. That doesn't make any sense. We've got another constituent that his dad has cancer, all right? And he's trying to get a humanitarian reassignment to be closer to his dad. Only because he's not taking the vaccine, they will not allow him to do a reassignment. Not because he's not qualified, not because of any of these things. So look, I'm glad that it looks like in the NDAA that they're not going to continue to discharge people for not taking the COVID. I'm disappointed that it's not in there, that they're going to get reinstated with back pay. But I mean, we're heading in the right direction. Now, the other thing I want to talk about quickly is we've got I think you should call it the Pelosi-Schumer spending bill coming up. I've been up here 4 years and I watch this. I mean, this is everything under the sun gets thrown in, and we spend unbelievable amounts of money, and guess what? We all pay higher taxes. We all see our inflation go up. This has got to stop. What we should, this Congress had the ability, I'm on budget committee, we had the ability to pass a budget. We didn't decide, made the decision not to pass a budget. Right? The Democrats made the decision not to pass a budget. So what we shouldn't be doing is passing a big Pelosi-Schumer spending bill without going through the budget process. What we ought to do is do a short-term CR sometime into the next Congress and let the next Congress do their job, pass a real budget, and then let us go through the budget. So that's what I think we need to not be continuing to do these ridiculous spending bills.
This is a good day for our young men and women in the military. It's a big deal that we chose to stand up and fight for them. And because of our fight that began last week with saying we wouldn't get on the bill unless something happened for our men and women in the military, it's going to happen. So this is a big day. They're going to get their jobs back. Many of these people, it's their dream. These are the young men and women who are willing to put their life on the line. And now we've come forward to say they deserve to be treated with respect. The story that I will tell you is of Alex Buckman. His wife, Olivia, worked for me as an intern. He's a young man. He graduated from Hillsdale College in 2017 and received his commission from OCS in the U.S. Marines. He flew the F-35B in the Marines, but his training was stopped in April 2022 because of his religious convictions over the COVID vaccine. My hope is to see him back flying again. Lieutenant John Bowes, Air Force, an Air Force Academy graduate, one of our elite from North Carolina. He completed one of the U.S. Air Force's most prestigious flight training programs, but he's been removed from flying duty as an F-16 student pilot. These are people we spend millions of dollars training that they've just been casting aside as of no use. These are valuable people. We need them in our military, and we need people to be allowed to have their own freedom. With regard to spending, the biggest problem we face in Washington is that we have abdicated our duty. We've abdicated the power of the purse. We abdicate it by letting all the spending be thrown into one bill. This is going to happen again. Mark my words, December 16th, December 18th, we're going to get a 3,000-page bill that'll have been given to us an hour or two before. I know, because this is the way it works every year. No one will read it. No one will know what it in. But what is a guarantee is that it'll add over $1 trillion in debt next year. The system is not working. We are not obeying the rules. We need a budget. We need 12 individual spending bills. And we need to add the policy that people elected us to add to spending. The power of the purse is the power not to fund things we disagree with. We don't like 87,000 new IRS agents to harass the middle class. We shouldn't fund it. But the only way we'll defeat it is if we do the budgeting the way it's supposed to be done. Budget, 12 spending bills, and then we put policy changes that our voters and our supporters want on this individual bills, and then we debate each individual bill. When we debate one bill, it becomes government shutdown or keep it open, and what ends up happening? The government always stays open, Republicans always spend more, Democrats spend more, and the deficit and the debt is now $31 trillion. So we are going to insist on budget, spending bills, and the proper procedure for running a country.
A Marine named Matthew Schaefer was married, had young children. He had a religious objection to receiving the COVID-19 vaccine. He filed his application for approval of his religious objection to the vaccine mandate within the Department of Defense. Remember, when they first rolled out the vaccine mandate, they said we will accommodate religious objectors who have a sincerely held religious objection to getting it. His religious objection-based exception was never acted upon. It was effectively pocket vetoed. And they wrote it out so long that it became meaningless, and they fired him, forcing this young Marine, Mr. Schaefer, and his wife and his young children to move in to his parents' basement. As if they needed to add insult to injury, they're now seeking to recoup $21,000 from Mr. Schaefer based on the argument that he violated his agreement with the Marine Corps by not serving the amount of time to which he had agreed. So this is a reason why I am at once, number one, elated that the Department of Defense saw the light and also saw that this is not the right thing to do, perhaps because we had a number of members of the Senate saying, we're not going to put up with this, and we're not just going to pass a Defense Authorization Act unless we have an opportunity to address this. So I commend them for that. I'm grateful for that. I commend and I'm grateful to my colleagues who are willing to stand behind this, and including senators like Marsha Blackburn and Ted Cruz, who filed legislation on this, and those who stood with them and saying we're going to oppose cloture unless we're able to address this issue. That is great news. That is a success story. I do think that we still have to worry about those who have already been fired, about Mr. Schaefer and countless others like him, about the U.S. Navy individual who I heard about recently, whose daughter has a medical condition, and notwithstanding the Fifth Circuit's order in this recent litigation, has been told that his health insurance has expired and his daughter won't be able to get her needed medical treatment covered by his health insurance by the Department of Defense. This appears to be in violation of the order issued by the Fifth Circuit. But all this begs the question, why should we assume, we're being told by many, that the Department of Defense is going to deal with those individuals fairly on a case-by-case basis as things move forward. In some cases, we're being told that they need to do this because in some instances, some probably exceptionally rare circumstances, someone might have been dismissed ostensibly for purposes related to the failure to comply with the vaccine mandate, but really it was for something else. First of all, I think that those circumstances are probably exceptionally rare and could be dealt with through other means. But what leads us to believe that they will, in fact, deal with these on a case-by-case basis when people like Mr. Schaefer were told something similar with the vaccine mandate, and then they pocket vetoed his religious objection-based exception? This isn't right. And so I'm going to continue to honor the promise that I made in signing a letter with a couple dozen of my colleagues that I'm not going to vote for cloture on this thing unless we're given a meaningful opportunity to address this issue in this bill. I think we need to do that. We owe it to them. Our national security depends on it in many ways. The recruitment is down, morale is down, in part because of stuff like this. And we need to deal with this issue now rather than on the basis of some prospective promise that they'll treat fairly those whom they have treated most unfairly with this policy. With regard to the spending bill, it's important to remember that since 1994, we've seen the House of Representatives shift, control of the House of Representatives shift from one party to another 4 times since 1994. In each of those instances, there was no omnibus passed by Congress following the election leading to that shift. It didn't happen because it shouldn't happen. That's not how things should work. When the voters have spoken and control of the House of Representatives shifts, there's an understandable desire on the part of the incoming members and especially on the part of those who elected them, that you're not going to have spending decisions made by the outgoing Congress that was just voted out of office and out of control of the majority. If we were to pass an omnibus, that would, I believe, be a very effective way at carrying forward the effect of this Congress, at carrying forward and advancing the Pelosi-Schumer spending priorities. But it's not good management policy, and it's especially bad management policy right now where we still don't have top-line numbers. There's no agreement on top-line numbers. There's no agreement on top-line numbers today. Look, we're less than 10 days out from when we're scheduled to go into recess before Christmas. And there's not a reasonable opportunity to write something, have it adequately aired by the American people, reviewed and understood by those asked to vote for it, and pass it all at the same time, which is part of the problem. Which is exactly why I think we need to pass right away a short-term spending measure taking these decisions into the next Congress so that the next Congress can address it with all deliberate speed once that happens. This is necessary not only because it's respectful to those voters who spoke loudly and clearly and elected a Republican House, but also because this practice of dropping a 3,000-page spending bill, and Rand Paul is not exaggerating here at all, at the last minute, and then using basically extortion to tell members of the House and Senate that they've got to vote something that they've never read, that their constituents have never had the opportunity to react to, and that they will have no opportunity to amend. This is wrong, and it's got to stop. This is a very good time in which to stop it. We can stop it and do so in a way that doesn't threaten anyone with the government shutting down by passing a short-term spending bill now, that will take us into next year. Look, our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines should not be used as pawns. Fear for whether they will get their paychecks and fear on the part of individual members about whether they're going to be able to get home for Christmas shouldn't be on the table. That shouldn't be used as bait for extortion, for making people vote for something that they know is wrong, that they've never seen, and they will have no opportunity to amend.
So, the vaccine mandate. You recall how long ago it was, but the government was going to force that upon every individual in the workforce down to any employee that was part of a business of 100 employees or more. Finally, the Supreme Court stepped in and took care of that. We did, in Congress, exercise the Congressional Review Act. In fact, my office led on that. That was a heavy hand of the federal government, regardless of what you think about how to navigate through the disease itself. The military, many Hoosiers, it's a very well-represented state in terms of in the military, associated support. Their ability to recruit, it was mentioned earlier, has been hampered big time, to where recently you have folks talking about to have the safe number of people there, you have to consider having a draft again. It's sad that it takes this, and finally we've exercised the leverage, I think, to where we're not going to just keep going along with it. Other thing I noticed, many Hoosiers told me that when they were in any occupation within the military, that there was variability among where they were, what they were doing, in terms of how much latitude you were going to have to maybe work through it. Stories like, well, we've got 3 to 4 months to work it out, to where they thought maybe they could cajole you into doing it. Imagine the anxiety that put into people having to figure whether they're going to still be able to be with a job, and especially on the support activities to boot. Let's get to the fiscal side of it. There's no place in the country that can run the way this joint does. I mean, I'm an appropriator and on the budget committee, double misery. Bernie Sanders gavels us in for a budget hearing where in 2 years we haven't had one discussion on budget mechanics or what we're going to do for the biggest business in the world that so many people look to. It is a broken system. And then you don't even do appropriations on time. Remember, this is something we should have had done September 30th, over a couple months ago. Last year, we didn't get it done until late February, early March. That is because you keep it behind closed doors, whether you're an appropriator or on the budget committee, which is a useless appendage as a committee here in the Senate currently. We haven't done one and stuck to it in over 10 years. Wouldn't be that big a deal until a couple decades ago we started putting everything on the credit card. With a couple wars, Obama administration came in and saw that if you can do it there, let's double down. Still, debt as a percentage of our GDP was manageable. Rick and I get here 4 years ago, $18 trillion in debt. Imagine, this is debt you guys and your kids will be paying for, is at 31. And our fearless leader just put the only blueprint out there that shows us $45 trillion in debt in 10 years. And takes the $1 trillion deficits that were bad enough and now baselines in $1.5 trillion deficits. Ask you all this, see how quickly you can come up with it. What's 1% of 30 trillion? Billion. It's such a big number, no one can spit that out immediately. Take interest rates that have just gone up 3 percentage points and take 3% of 30 trillion. 900 billion. 900 billion plus the roughly 400 to 500 billion we already spend, that's about 1.5 trillion. That's going to be 50% more than we spend on either defense or discretionary domestic spending. That puts a little flesh on the bones. That's where we've come as a country. Shameful.
You can answer any questions anybody has. Good job with your math.
Senator Lee and Ron, I ask you this because you're on judiciary and you appropriate for judiciary. This Justice Department probe of the Mar-a-Lago record is still going. And we got reports of more classified documents now found. What do you make of the Department of Justice investigation or the significance of the records?
Yeah. That investigation's ongoing, and I don't have access to those documents. I can't speak to that, but we're here to talk about other stuff.
Senator Lee, you had mentioned, and I was wondering for the rest of you all, that you were going to also, you're going to stick to that amendment to not advance the NDAA because it's missing this key piece here that you guys were pushing for last week. Are you all in agreement on that?
Yeah, I am.
And if not, did you have a plan moving forward to try to leverage that?
Well, one of the discussions that we had at lunch today was whether or not an additional amendment could occur on the NDAA such that we'll have an amendment to reinstate the soldiers with back pay. So there is a possibility that we may be able to negotiate that amendment, which would be one step better than what we have in the bill currently.
And we'd be willing to do that. We'd be willing to support cloture if we got an agreement on a vote on that. A vote on that would be germane. It's a germane amendment. As a germane amendment, it would be subject to being adopted at a simple majority threshold, and I'd take that.
Scott, what this is, the entire conversation is kind of boiling down to is the idea that you didn't have a plan and an agenda, just with kind of where you were running against Majority Leader McConnell about. Do you think that this whole push that you're going for kind of ties into how we're not won in Georgia? I mean, why do you think Walker lost yesterday in Georgia? And do you think that it's time for your party to kind of step away from Trump when it comes to these races?
Well, I think, first off, every race is an individual race, and to me, it's very disappointing. As you know, I was very optimistic going into November. I think we all have to figure out what we have to do differently. 70% of the country, I think it is, thinks we're heading the wrong direction. I know as a group, what we are hoping to do is let's focus on the issues and try to redirect where we get, some positive things done for the American public. I think every one of us, and I think every senator came up here to do that. I just think we've got to now do everything we can to make that happen. I think it's a big win to what we did with the NDA. I think that we've got to figure out how we get our fiscal house in order. I think Mike and I came up at the same time, but Senator Lee and Senator Paul have been up here. Why aren't we passing budgets? I mean, just doesn't make any sense. We're business guys, and I borrowed a lot of money at one time. I had to go to the bank with a plan, and if I didn't make my plan, I was in trouble. So we've got to start doing that.
I've got a quick on that. When it comes to the fiscal side of it, there's no entity that could get by with running, again on the numbers, a 20 to 30% loss. And this is money given to us by taxpayers. You would not have, obviously, the printing press in the basement. You would not have a credit card that you could keep swiping. So, and when it gets down to the political stuff, it's very clear for me. We better learn from what's happened in the last presidential elections over time, where we lose the popular vote. We won the popular vote here through the U.S. rep seats. That's one good bit of news by 5 million votes. But if it's not clear to see that we get outmaneuvered in the tactics of how you win these elections, they found out that they had movable voters in Arizona, Nevada, and Pennsylvania, and got to them with the message. Probably made the difference in those areas. Candidate quality does count. And then you could never have anything that's going to resonate generally if there's not a clear plan of what you're for. We are basically for nothing, and we complain about it along the way and then say, well, maybe we'll tell you after we're elected. It's not going to work. Democrats are political enterprisers. This place is kind of their growth business and cathedral all wrapped into one. We are flat-footed, and we're going to keep seeing the same results if we don't do something different. And you can't get by with any of that, again, in the real world because you keep losing.
Senator, jumping off of Frank's question there, you predicted a GOP majority, and here we are with the one-seat lead for Democrats. What went wrong? Is former President Trump's endorsement the kiss of death, as another Republican senator said today? And how do you plan to work across the aisle with Schumer and Democrats, and also within your own party with McConnell?
So I think with regard to the election, one thing Democrats have done a good job. They got their mail-in. They did a better job with early votes, mail-in, and early voting. We've done that, for a long time in Florida. I do great with mail-in ballots and with early voting because we work at it. We all have to start doing that. I think we do have to have a message that when Republicans run, you say this is what Republicans are going to get done. Every race is going to be a little bit different, but we've got to have an agenda. We've got $31 trillion of debt. We've got inflation 40-year high. We've got crime. We've got open border. We've got to show the American public that we have a reason. There's a reason to vote for us, and we have to tell them why they vote for us. Here's my experience with endorsements. I got none of them in 10. All right, and I won. I was not the establishment candidate. I think people vote based on what they think is important to them. It's generally their economy. It's generally their kids' education. It's generally the crime. That's how people vote. They don't vote because one of us tells them they should vote that way.
We'll take one more question, guys.
What's the explanation for why the JCPA was excluded from the NDAA? It looked like it was going in at one point, and there was blowback from Facebook and Meta. Now it's not in there. How do you avoid the optics of, again, big tech dictating policy in Washington?
I think on the NDAA, the issue was we had to keep things tied to the NDAA. NDAA shouldn't be a vehicle that we have all these extraneous bills that people would like to get done at the end of the year that might not be able to get done on their own. And I think that's just one example of a bill that it should go through. If it's a good bill, it should go through the process on its own, and we should have debate on the floor, and then whether it passes or not, it shouldn't be tied to a must-pass bill like the NDAA. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you guys. They called it out.